my political, my secular rather than my theological view. But I do think there is a problem with the rest of what Dinesh said on this point. The other injunctions about love, and we'll stay just with Christianity for the moment. A problem I always had with it was compulsory love. Not you're compelled to love your neighbor, or even not just to love him, but to remember to love him or her as you love yourself, an injunction that actually cannot be obeyed. Nobody with any integrity and self-respect can have the same regard for another person as he has for himself and perhaps his family. It's not to be expected. It's more than can be demanded. It's a work of supererogation. And it has the sinister corollary that because you know you can never quite do it, you're always falling short. You must always flagellate yourself for failing to come up to this magnificent idea. You're always going to be guilty again. You can't possibly be right. You're always in a state of sin. And this has the connotation, again, of the totalitarian, a law you cannot obey. Further, you're supposed to return this love to someone who is your creator. And you're told, in addition to being compelled to love this person, you must also fear him. Is there not a problematic element here? Compulsory love for a being, a supreme being, of whom you must also, at all times, always be in fear. When I think of this, the image I get is of George Orwell's Big Brother in 1984, where adoration is extracted from people who are in a state of holy terror. It doesn't seem like morality to me. Now, the so-called golden rule, that we should have the same consideration for others that we expect them to have for us, is a very fine rule in its way. It has a limitation I'm about to mention, but it's a decent enough rule, and it's not hysterical, and it's not totalitarian, and it doesn't demand the impossible of people. Don't do to another what would be repulsive if they did it to you. We know that that was said by Rabbi Hillel long before Christianity, Babylonian rabbi. Something almost exactly in that form of words also appears in the Analects of Confucius. So it predates monotheism altogether. Some such idea is obviously innate to us. It's commonsensical. The limitation, I'll just mention it conversationally, is it's a rule that's only really as good as the person who's uttering it. The person who's uttering it must be a person of average moral character, because there are many people, let me think of an example. Well, Charles Manson, for example. It's ludicrous for me to say of him that I don't want anything done to him I wouldn't want done to myself. Obviously, I want different things to happen to Charles Manson. I don't judge it by what I think I'm entitled to. So the rule is in danger of becoming tautologous and of breaking down. And that's why I don't think that there are, in that sense, religious or moral absolutes. And why it never makes any sense to say that we wouldn't know right from wrong if we couldn't refer it upwards to the unseen celestial court. There will always, unfortunately, be ethical and moral approximations. And that's part of the curse of our mammalian condition. Now, I deliberately did not say that suicide bombing, I think the record will show, was an exclusively religious monopoly. I said it was almost exclusively a religious monopoly, because I know myself about the Tamil Tigers, and I agree with what Dinesh said about that. I said the genital mutilation of infants community was exclusively religious. But if I'd been going to make an exception on the suicide murder and suicide bombing one, I wouldn't have chosen the Japanese kamikaze. After all, their emperor was a god in Japan. Japan was one of the most completely theocratic of the three countries that made up the Nazi-fascist axis. The emperor was, until he renounced his divinity, rather conveniently in 1945, a god. So anyone committing a kamikaze action was doing it to please the divinity. Just a point I don't think that is negligible. How much time do I have about Jupiter protecting us from meteors? Oh, that's all right. Well, we wouldn't be here if meteors didn't come smashing into the Earth at fairly regular intervals. It's almost certainly only because of a titanic meteor strike, probably on the Yucatan Peninsula, that the dinosaurs got out of the way and the hitherto small, squeaking, frightened mammals that had been under their hoofs were able to evolve a bit and get on with becoming human. But if you're going to say that that physics and evolution are evidence of some divine design, here are some of the difficulties that you're going to have to face. First, whether or not there used to be nothing and there's now something, and that something is the miracle, however we resolve that, we do know one thing for absolutely sure. Our something is very soon going to be replaced by nothing. The Hubble red light shift, some of you will know about it, used to postulate that the Big Bang means that we're exploding away faster than we had thought from the original source. That matter is flying apart, the observable universe is flying apart much more quickly than we had thought. It was then thought for Newtonian reasons, well, that's going to slow down. The rate, at least, will slow down. Recent discoveries by a great physicist named Lawrence Krauss have shown to the contrary. The rate of expansion is actually increasing. In other words, very, very, very soon, it won't be even possible to detect the red light shift anymore. So a lot of nothingness is coming our way, and if that wasn't enough, the Andromeda Galaxy, which can be seen almost by the naked eye in the night sky now, is headed directly on collision course with our own. That's some design, isn't it? Of taking our own tiny little suburb of this magnificent cosmological city, our negligible little suburb, just our solar system, for an example, of all the planets in it, all of them but ours, are either much, much, much too hot or much, much, much too cold to support any kind of life. And of our own planet, huge tracts of it, the same can be said, either too hot or too cold, and on a knife edge. And we've only been on it for about 100,000 years minimum, 250,000 years maximum, and our tenancy on it can already be seen to be very short term. And in the meantime, we've discovered that of all the species ever put on this planet, or to have occurred on it, I mean to say, 98 to 99% have already become extinct. So if all of the things I've just mentioned to you, all of which are true and factually verifiable, are the responsibility of a deity, then there's only one conclusion you can draw. This deity must be very, very clumsy, very tinkering, very improvising, and very, very wasteful of cosmic and human and animal material, at least. He must be very, very capricious indeed, playing and toying with his creatures and his creations, and/or he must be very cruel and very indifferent. So if you want to award these responsibilities to your God or to your religion, then I'm entitled, I think, to wish you joy of it. Thank you.
Okay, we begin now the 15-minute head-to-head session, and Mr. Hitchens will begin by questioning Mr. D'Souza.
Oh, I thought it was the other way around.
I believe we let him start first, so we're letting you start the head-to-head first.
I was about to say I'm not ready, but that's not quite true.
You want me to go first?
No, it's perfectly all right.
Okay.
Wouldn't you say that we, well-matched as we are as chaps, and as magnificent mammals, either products of evolution or of a creator, that our position on this stage isn't precisely equivalent? In other words, you couldn't really resent it if I said, you've got a burden of proof that I don't really have. Because it's not just a matter, is it, of saying there might be a force, a life force, an originating force, which I can't obviously disprove. But you have to show that there's a force that actually cares about humans, intervenes in human affairs, cares which country wins a war, perhaps, or even which party wins an election, who knows, but perhaps answers prayers, takes an interest. In other words, there's a big gap between deism, the idea of a god, and theism, the idea of a religion that can propitiate a god and can know what he wants of us.
Well, I would agree, in part, as upholding the affirmative in any debate, what's so great about God, I need to show what's great about God. Now, it's true that our topic is huge, and if you want to go into issues of